Hello, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. So, welcome. Uh, so for today, I wanted to go over, Ensabal, hello! I wanted to go over a demo on animating expressions. We talked about it a lot in the last few streams, we analyzed it a lot. I figured we might as well go over animating it. I've done demos on facial posing, but today, especially since a lot of you at this point, for those of you in AM, especially for those of you in class 4, that's what you're doing right now. Not only that, you're going to be moving to lip sync in the next week or two. So I wanted to go over a quick demo on taking all the stuff that we applied and learned in the analysis and now actually putting it into proper application, actually doing it ourselves. So that's going to be the kind of goal of this demo. Now I'm not sure how much we'll get to. I'm going to try to pose out the face as quickly as possible so that we're spending less time on the posing part of it and go more into the animation. But we might end up just having to do the kind of base today and then the in-depth animation on Monday. So we'll see how far we can get. I'll try to get as far as we can while still trying to explain my thought process on what I'm doing. So hopefully this will be interesting. Hopefully you guys will get something out of it. And as usual, if you do have questions about any of this, definitely let me know. Or if you have any other questions in general. So let's just jump right in. So for this expression, I'm going to be doing a couple of different things. I'm just going to have a very simple expression change. I'm not going to be going through a whole acting scene. It's going to be one expression to another. Because really, once you can do that, it's just kind of building up and continuing from one to another to another to another. The other thing I want to do is I'm making sure that my camera is not in front of the character, but to the side. And I'm doing this for a very specific reason, and that is to show the fleshiness of the face. It's something that I see a lot of students tend to forget. So I want to kind of highlight that a little bit more in this example. So with this, let's actually just jump in and get started. So for this facial expression, like the other tests that I've done before, the first thing I do is I try to take the character off of the default T-pose. Even though I'm just focusing on the face, shoulders up, nothing more. I'm not going to be doing any body animation on this. By posing out the character and just bringing the arms down, relaxing the shoulders, getting a little bit of a tilt to the head, it makes the character a lot more interesting to look at than just T-pose. So this is one of those things that I like to do regardless of the test that I'm doing. I'm not a fan of keeping the character in their default rig state. Especially when I'm starting a new shot, I'll always try to create a default pose for the character. And if I'm working on like a series of shots with the same character, I'll actually pose them in a kind of default pose for them. So that character's default pose, save it to a pose library, and then whenever I start a new shot with that character, even if it's the same rig as another shot, if I have to use that character, I can just bring that in, done, start animating from there instead of the rig default. So with that, let's actually start posing of the face and get right into it. So for this first expression, I want to show kind of a big change. I was thinking maybe trying to do a subtle expression change, but those are hard to see, and a lot of it is you feel it more than you see it. So I figured, might as well just go with a bigger change. So for the first expression here, what I'm going to try and go for, we'll see if it succeeds, is kind of a what would be the right word? Not tired, but kind of like, it's not quite pouting, but bored expression, I guess you could say. So I really want to push the eyes being kind of lidded and uninterested. Really get that flat shape to the top of the eyelids here. And as I'm posing out faces, a lot of times what I'll try to do is I'll try to just get the core facial expression in first. So what I mean by this is I'm not going to worry about the design elements just yet. Making sure, I've got contrapposto, line of action, all of that stuff. That's going to come in. I'm going to get it in there. We can't forget it. But I want to make sure I have a good starting point. And Jupit, hello! Once I have a starting point, then I'll be able to just build everything from there. So I'm kind of getting a little caught up in some details, but the big reason for that is whenever you're doing a kind of tired expression, or you want the eyes to kind of feel flat, it's going to take a little bit more time to get that eyelid flat. Eyelids are, on most rigs, are not made to appear flat. So I'm just trying to get this kind of neutral expression on the lids here. Versus, let's actually compare this. Boop. If I just go forward here, and then let's reset the eyes super quick. So just set all of these to 0. Open the lids. So if you just close the eyes to get a bored expression, just take eyelids and close them directly, sometimes you'll get something like this. That doesn't look bored. That kind of looks tired. Maybe like half asleep. Whereas that starts to look bored. You can see the difference in the shape of the eye. That shape alone is going to sell the mood of the character much more. So when I'm posing characters out, shaping certain things depending on the pose is going to be very important. Other times, if it's just kind of eyes open, it'll be like quick, just global rotation done. Need nothing more than that. Okay. So now this is bored, not angry. So I'm not going to be bringing her brows down like this. This will make her feel like she's a little peeved at something. Not quite the expression I want to go for. I want more of that kind of just, like, I'm done, like, whatever kind of expression. Still interesting to look at, but I want to sell that kind of disinterest. One of the points I got from your last stream is not to change the shape of the eyes using the eyelids, but to use the brows covering the eyelids. Okay, so that's actually a really good point. So when you're changing the shape of the eyelids, we do have to change the shape to form with the eye. We want to avoid using the eyelid to sell major expressions, for example, anger. I don't want to do this. This is not going to sell anger. To sell anger, I would just take the brows and bring them down and rotate them, and this is kind of a bad example here, but rotate them to cover the eyes. In this case, I'm shaping the eyelid, but I'm not shaping it away from the default, the default form too much. So for example, the default form of the eye is that the lid tends to, not always, but tends to kind of curve the most at the pupil area where the pupil iris is. So naturally, for example, this would kind of be a more natural expression. I don't want to go away from that too much. So for example, I don't want to bring this down or get weird shapes like this. But what I can do is I can minimize or scale up the degree of that shape. So for example, I could flatten it out. It's still got a little bit of that shape in there. It's not perfectly flat. It's still going to have a curve in there slightly. But I'm making sure that curve is still in that same spot. Or if the eye was maybe a little bit more open, I could take that curve and make it a little bit bigger. So I'm exaggerating this shape, but I'm still it's kind of taking, let me actually draw this out here. It's taking a curve and just making it a little bit more subtle, like that. Instead of taking that curve and maybe going like this or like that, where you're starting to deform the curve. I hope that makes sense. It's just kind of scaling the intensity of the curve. So you still maintain the character's eye shape, but you're exaggerating it. It's kind of like how a character might smile. And some people, for example, smile on one side of their face, and you can go from like here to here, where it's just a little bit more extreme. The eyes are the same. We can push the intensity of emotions based on that curve, but we don't want to shape the lid in a different way. So angry, it's pointed this way. Happy, it's pointed that way. That kind of thing. That's actually a really good question. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see, adding just a little skin there, fleshiness right in there will help keep the eye from feeling kind of orbital. Okay. Let's try to look at a nice smile expression. The thing with teeth, and I'm actually going to be going into a smile in the next expression. The thing with a smile is the teeth oftentimes have to be designed, which is very odd to think about because teeth are teeth. They are solid bone, enamel covered bone, but we do have to design them a lot of the time and actually move them, which will give you that nice expression. And we'll kind of go over that in just a little bit here. So let's see, we've got the brows. I might take the brows, and she kind of feels a little peeved right now. Maybe kind of make it a little bit more neutral. It's like, whatever. That's kind of the expression I'm going for right now. Mostly because I've seen a lot of people try this expression, and it often ends up kind of just feeling neutral. And is a tough expression to really sell you're taking a character, trying to make them feel like they're not feeling anything, while also making the audience feel something for them and not to have the audience feel bored while looking at it. So it's a tricky expression. So let's kind of bring the mouth in a little bit. Just a little. Maybe bring the corners down just a little bit. I don't want to frown, not like that. Just a little kind of downwards arc here. So something like that. Where it's just like her face is relaxed and it's all just kind of hanging a little bit. Not frowning, but just neutral. Okay, so we've kind of got the default expression here, and at this point, like, that's decent. It's a good start at least, but let's try to push it a little bit more. And I'm not going to go too far with this, because when I'm designing expressions, one thing I don't want to do is make one expression go all the way into the tiny little details, only to go to the next expression and then find out that, oh wait, I need to inverse something so I get a bigger contrast. And then I have to go back to the first expression and reverse something and redo a whole bunch of work. So I'm just going to get it close-ish here, go to the next expression, and then we'll kind of jump back between the two to make sure we've got a good, interesting contrast in them. So let's do a few more tweaks here. So the first thing I want to do is push the fleshiness of the face. So this is the step that I see a lot of students miss out on, is lips especially. They can move in and out. We can go like this, or when we smile, they get pulled into our teeth. They don't just move in the corners. So for example, if she's kind of bored, that lip might kind of stick out just a little bit. And silhouette wise, this is important because let me bookmark this camera right here. From the side, the silhouette of the mouth might change. By default, the top lip kind of sticks out a little bit more. But if she's kind of bored, that bottom lip might kind of jut out just a little bit. We don't want this. That would kind of make her feel like she's biting her top lip. But just the slight rotation and kind of looseness there. And Bean Slinger and Hoka Kicker, thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. So let's move this camera back there. Okay. So it's not much, but just enough that we can see that in silhouette. So maybe something like that. Okay. So what else can we push while we're here? Well, another thing that the mouth does is it's not stationary in the sense of just left and right and that's it. It moves up, so we can do this, and it moves down. So if you're bored, oftentimes the mouth tends to go up. Yeah. Versus if you are like really tired, your mouth will go down. So she's not tired. It's not like she's half asleep. This is what's going to differentiate this pose. If she was half asleep, her mouth might kind of come down here, and it's like the whole face is drooping down as she's barely able to hold the muscles in place. But since she's bored, it's more kind of waiting. So the mouth might come up a little bit, just a little. And that alone can change the entire feeling of an expression in a very subtle way. Now you can push this a lot, so I could bring this way up here, or just a little bit. So we'll kind of do that a little. Let's see. What else do I want to do? Don't want to push that lip too far, or else she'll look kind of odd. I can always exaggerate later, once I know what my other pose is going to be. Maybe tighten the lip as well. So this is the other thing. Lips, not just the corners. You can tighten them. We can really put our lips tight, or they can be loose and kind of separated from each other. So again, if she's tired, her bottom lip might just be hanging. But because she's kind of a little bit more tense here, I'll bring that lip up and just kind of give that tighter feeling to the mouth there. Okay. So I think the last thing I want to do before I move on to the next expression is just change her eye direction so that it's looking out a little bit more versus looking in. If you have a character kind of thinking to themselves or not really looking at the world around them, the eyes will tend to cross a little bit. If they're looking at something, the eyes will separate a little bit more. And the further away it is, the more parallel they become. So I don't want to go too far, or else we'll get quite some weirdness there. But just enough that the character looks like they're looking at something versus looking and thinking inwardly. And Valorum, thank you so much for the follow. What am I doing? I'm doing a expression change demo. So showing how I would approach animating a character from one expression into another. This is something I see a lot of my students kind of struggle with from time to time, and I want to kind of give some tips on ways to avoid the common pitfalls with this kind of animation. Okay, so we've got that. Now there's definitely some stuff that we need to tweak. For example, the shape of the bottom lid here, I might want to kind of just tweak ever so slightly right here, just to kind of adjust that shape a little bit more, add more directionality. But for now, let's call this here so that we can get working on the next expression and see where we actually have to go to. Now, in terms of timing for this, I don't have a set time, but let's go, maybe we'll do 24 frames. So this will be frame 27. So, next expression is going to be happy and smiling. Now, when I'm doing expressions, one thing I'm not personally a fan of is starting from an already posed expression like this. I've just done a whole bunch of stuff on this expression, and now I want to do another one, and I'm going to have to reset a lot of the stuff. So what I often have is, you'll notice I have frame 2 here, where, oh, and actually I pushed that on the wrong frame there. And actually this is a good example of, you can see how the mouth makes a big difference. That little change right there. It feels weird when the one eye just moves like that, but the mouth, a little change, but it changes the expression. But on frame 1 here, which I kind of hid out of the way, I have the default expression. What this allows me to do is, whenever I need to start a new expression and I don't want to have to reset everything manually, I can just go here. Usually it's on frame 0. Copy it to frame 27, and there we go. The expression is ready to go, and I'm not having to redo everything or undo the pose changes I've already done. Okay, so now this is going to be the character smiling and happy. And the first thing I'm going to do before anything else is I'm going to change the angle of the face. The reason for this is faces are not in a limbo. They are not just the face moving alone. The whole head goes into a facial expression, and it can change a lot of the mood of the face if you add the head angle to it too. So for example, if I smile like this straight on, that's okay. If I smile like this, it's the same smile, I'm not changing it, but suddenly that doesn't seem like a happy smile anymore. And all I've done is I've changed the angle. So you can get a lot of variety and expression in an expression just by changing that angle of the head. And I'll kind of add a little bit of the neck too. Let's see, which way do I want to angle the head? So she's smiling. I do want to add a little bit of tilt to the head and maybe kind of bring it over so it kind of opens up to the audience a little bit more. Not too much, because I do want to show the lips moving here. If I go too far forward like this, we won't see those lips really moving. Okay. And I might even, because she's happy, her shoulders might actually come up ever so slightly and maybe back. So it's not a big change right there, but just enough that we can feel some expression in the character. And what I'm looking at here is I want to make sure that the head is the thing that really changes and not the shoulders. The shoulders, we should feel them moving, but our attention should be 100% on the head. And let's see, maybe I can push it a little bit more. It's fine if it's just your head. Now with a smile, I don't want to go too high with the head. That tends to create a disingenuine smile. I should just start on frame 3 here. Okay. There we go. It's a small change, but it's enough for now. So let's go into the smile. Now, smiles are also a very tricky expression because to create a genuine smile, there's a lot of little details you need to do. It sounds like The Incredibles, but it's from Evil Genius, I believe. You can see the soundtrack in the bottom left corner there. But it definitely had that Incredibles 60s spy vibe. Banjo-Kazooie. I've never played Nuts and Bolts, but the Banjo-Kazooie series is definitely one of my favorites. And hello, Caleb, how's it going? So let's go for a smile. And I really want to kind of push the genuine smile here. Now, I've done demos like this before. When you're doing a smile, one of the big things to avoid is just making that, where it's only the lips, or not even the lips, it's only the corners of the mouth that are going into the smile. This will tend to make creepy smiles, especially if, for example, you have to show the teeth. So if I have to lower this lip here and start doing this, this kind of gives to me a Hannibal-esque smile. It's that serial killer, creepy, just like kind of like a puppet. The ventriloquist puppet smiles is just very odd. So we want to make that feel like a genuine smile instead. So a lot of that has to do with the connectivity of the face. So let's do that really quick. First thing, I'm going to pose out the eyes to get a little bit more shape towards the iris. Let's actually make sure, before I go too far, make sure the eye direction stays the same. Good. Okay. Now, the brows will go up a little bit. Let's just give a slight rotation. Not too much. I do want to shape them myself here. So already that's starting to help. The mouth isn't the only thing that smiles. Exactly. Everything in the face smiles. A true, genuine smile, you'll see it across the entire face. So, we've got the brows very roughly. Again, keep in mind, this is like pose version 0.1. It's going to go through a lot of changes after this. So, let's go for the eyes now. Now, the big thing with the eye when you smile is that the bottom lid is going to be affected. And the reason for that is as the cheek goes up here, or as the mouth goes up, the cheek gets pushed up as well. So we're going to have a little bit more mass going up here, which is going to push the bottom lid of the eye up on that side. So you get a little compression there. So something a little bit more like that. And we can even take the whole corner of the eye and raise it as well to accentuate that squeezing on that side. Now the same thing with the skin under the eye. This is something a lot of people tend to forget, is on many rigs you can animate the skin under the eye, and this is going to help push that cheek pushing on the outside of the eye versus the inside. So let's get that in place here. And already that's helping a lot compared to that dead expression. And hello, Sarah, how's it going? So let's kind of quickly do the other side. The other side won't be quite as much, but we can still push it, especially the corner of the eye. It's amazing what the corner will do. Okay. Now the cheek as well, can't forget that. Especially on this side, the cheek is going to be very important because it's going to be the one that we see in silhouette. So kind of pushing the cheek, puffing out a little bit as everything kind of pushes up, and we get that reshaping right in there. Bottom lid, let's kind of push that up a bit and shape it. So already we're pulling the rig away from serial killer smile. Is it done? No, we've got a lot of work to do yet, but that's feeling a lot more genuine. Let's see, when you have a bored expression like the first one, where you can see the skin above the eyelid and where the line is, so the skin above the eyelid, so right there, would you drag that down to the eyelid to hide the line? A little bit. So it depends on the character. For example, some people, if you look at their brows, so let's say you have a character's brow here, and then the eye, so let's say we've got the eye socket here, and the eye sits inside there. So, whoop, the eye sits within that socket. Some people have very little skin over that part of their eye. So you'll get this kind of really sharp definition between the lid and then the eyebrow. Other people, for example me, I have a lot of skin there, which tends to kind of flatten this out and create this much smoother line right through there. Others have even more, which creates basically that kind of feeling when we see them from the side. So it really depends on the character, who you're animating, and the style you want to go for. The big thing is that you want to keep that consistent throughout. You don't want to have a character start off one way and then end the shot in a different way. So for example, on this board expression, I have changed these controls a little bit. If I reset them, you can see this is what I had before. It gives these really deep shadows here. Now, you don't want to go too far with them or else you'll start to get this, which could also work, but again, it depends on who the character is. For me personally, this is not as interesting because now we have no definition in the brow area. So I like to go kind of a happy medium where we get that softer look, but we still get the contrast, the silhouette, where we can clearly see the eye versus the brow. And even on something like this, I'm actually going to be pushing these controls. I could push them up a little bit if she's like really excited. And if it's more kind of a calm smile, I can just bring those down a little bit and shape them just a little bit more like that. Now, from the front, this face is going to look really creepy because everything is perfectly symmetrical on both sides. So we've done a quick pass on the eyes and already they're looking better. Now the mouth. We put this mouth into a smile and ooh, it's creepy. Well, why is it creepy? Well, there's a few different things. The first one, and probably the biggest, is as she's smiling, her mouth is just being pulled straight out like this, which gives a very, well, we'll say it's an interesting look. It's a very Joker-esque smile, I guess you could say. Instead, we want to make sure that as the character smiles, the mouth corners are being pulled from the cheekbones here and are being pulled up to there. And the cheekbones kind of are a little bit behind the front teeth for most people. So when you're smiling, your mouth is actually being pulled back ever so slightly. So instead of going straight out, we actually want to bring it in slightly like this. So now we're getting a little bit more depth to that mouth shape. You can see this roundness happening. It's a terrible angle, but you can see that difference right there. Just pulling it in to wrap around the teeth. It doesn't have to be much, but a little bit will help. The other thing, lips are stretched over the teeth, which means that they're not going to just be sitting out. Again, just like on the other one where the lips kind of came out a little bit more, with this, lips are going to go in. This is, again, a top thing that I see students forget when they're doing mouth shapes is lips are stretchy. So as she smiles, her lips are going to tighten against her teeth slightly. Like that. And all of a sudden, that makes a huge difference. Suddenly, instead of just feeling like the character is just being pulled like this, now it feels like there's a smile in here. It's still very creepy, but it's starting to look better. We can push this even more. For example, when we smile, our mouth tends to come up a little bit. Now, the teeth are going to look very strange here for just a second. But this is going to help give that like more fleshy feeling to the mouth. Again, where a big thing is trying to avoid the feeling that someone just pulled your cheeks. That's the big thing. And Reversible Wave, thank you so much for the follow. And Sugarbach, thank you as well. So we've got that. Let's see. What else can we do here? Well, we can push. At this point, what do I want to push? We need to really sell the genuineness of the smile. And I think at this point, I've kind of got the core in here. I should really just figure out the directionality of the face that I want to get now. So what I mean by directionality is, right now, everything is perfectly even. So for anyone who hasn't heard me talk about this before, when you're posing out a face, we don't want to just pose out a face where everything is even. The brows are even. Let's say a character is looking in this direction. The nose is even, and then the mouth is even. And let's actually kind of do that bored expression here. For the bored expression, it would be more like this. So let's say you've got that. So you've got your character, bored expression, and you can see everything is perfectly in line and perfectly symmetrical on both sides. This is a boring expression, both because the character looks bored, but also because it's not fun to look at. Instead, we can push that expression a little bit more. So for example, we can push the contrapposto and line of action of the face. So for how I would do that is you could have one eye kind of like this, and then the other eye might be a little bit more open, just a little bit. Something like this. So now you're starting to get a little bit of shape to the eyes here. The brows, maybe the same thing. Maybe one brow is kind of a little higher than the other. Now, if you don't want to get quizzical, you can still do a little bit of the same thing. Quizzical would be like this. The mouth, push it off to the side a little bit. Again, our mouth is very fleshy. We can move it side to side. And then the nose, because it's cartilage, will move along with that. So now, it's very slight, but we've got this angle to the face here and a line to it, which is going to make the character look much more interesting, even with a bored expression. Now, you can push this in very subtle ways, or you can push it extreme ways. So for example, if a character is really happy, you can push this like for a smile. Let's say the character is still looking to the side. You can really push that expression and push that cartooniness of it and push that mouth. Then the nose would be like that. So now we've got this huge range. And that adds appeal versus making a smiling character that's just this. That's just a generic smiley face. So with a board expression, it tends to have to be more subtle because any offset and will make the character look like she's like quizzical and it's like, really? That kind of expression versus bored. But we can still try and push in some ways. So one thing I'm actually going to do, I'm actually going to take the brows and move them forward slightly, just to add a little bit more contrast to the shape of the brow there. Let's see. So the big thing for this board expression is probably going to be the mouth. This is going to be the big area that we can push things. So instead of just going like that, maybe she's kind of mouth off to the side a little bit. And the way I'm going to think about which side I want to have her compressed on is to both see if I can add more contrast to the face and also to see if I can sell what she's bored with. And this comes to the directionality. I've talked about this a lot. I know for those of you who've seen this before, I'm pretty sure it's probably getting boring. But if you open up the face in this direction, so let's say we'll just do the eyes here, like that. This means the character is interested in what they're looking at. If you go the other way, like this means that they're not interested in what they're looking at. They don't like it. It's like, it's a negative emotion to it because the one side is closing off. It's kind of like if you're looking at something and, oh, that's delicious. That side's going to open up. Ugh, I don't like that. It closes down. So if she's bored at whatever she's looking at, that side's going to go, really? That? Versus just kind of being neutral. And since she's looking screen right, I can push that right there. And let's rotate the mouth as well. So already that's going to be adding some line of action. You can see from the front of the face already, we're starting to get that curve. We can maybe move the mouth corners a little bit more just to make them asymmetrical. So since the mouth is being pushed this way, this side of the mouth is going to be more compressed. Let's see, what else can I do? Maybe try to make the top lip a little thinner, just so we can see that contrast between top and bottom lip. Jerem, hello! And I think Amelun, thank you so much for the follow as well. And Anthony, thank you so much. So we've got the mouth here now, and Jerem, thank you so much as well. So the nose is another thing people tend to forget about. The nose is very flexible. It moves a lot. If I do this, you can see how much my nose is moving. It follows the mouth. The base of the nose, like right about here and down, is cartilage. It's very flexible. So anytime your lip moves, that nose is going to be affected. So if she's going like this, the whole nose is going to kind of twist and move along with. Not all the way, but a little bit. This will give a nice kind of fleshiness where when she smiles and changes direction here, now we're going to see that nose even move. So we've got that. Now the eyes, let's kind of close it a little bit more. I don't have a website with my previous work. Unfortunately, most of the previous work I've done is still under NDA. I do have a demo reel site. I can't remember what the command is for it. But it is, I think it should be down below there. It's a site for my brother and I. And the work on there is old. I will say that right now. We haven't updated it in 5-6 years. So I like to keep it around basically because it shows where I was when I graduated animation school. And the reason for me that's important is I now teach animation as well. And when I started learning animation, I had 0 animation experience. I knew nothing about animation, like literally nothing. When I jumped into animation school, I used to be a baker before that. My brother and I were both bakers. We started animation. We had no idea what any of it was. And by the time we finished our school, which was Animation Mentor, we had those demo reels on our website, which, yeah, it's, let's see, I think it's thepratbros.com. I believe. There you go. See, there's the command. And from there, we've now gotten hopefully better. I would hope so. And Artstuff, hello! Tofu Juice, thank you so much for the follow. How's it going, Artstuff? For anyone who doesn't know Artstuff, he is an awesome rigger. He made the Zelda rig, which you've probably seen on Twitter. There's so many awesome shots with it. Check out his streams. They're a lot of fun. Also check out, if you're animating, check out his rigs. The Zelda rig especially. I'm a huge fan of Zelda, if you haven't noticed from the background. So check out that rig. It is so much fun to work with. And Mermodi, thank you so much for lurking it. I don't mind when people lurk. I love, as long as you guys are having fun here, that's all that matters to me. And Arsoft just hanging around. Nice. I may have finally found an apartment. Nice. Congrats. Apartment hunting is not fun. It's stressful. I had to do that once a long time ago now, and it was just such a pain. Let's see. Behaviourally lurking. Nice. Let's see. So for the board expression, there's a few different boards that I can go with, and I can get the different feeling just by the bottom lid. So for example, if I bring it down here, this is going to make her feel more tired. It's going to kind of give this sagging feeling to the outer eye and make her feel like she's just had a really long day. If I bring it up a little bit, she's going to be a little bit more focused in her boredom. So she's not tired, she's just bored. So I think I'm going to try to go for that a little bit more. It'll also give a nice kind of dynamic swoop to the eye. Another thing you can do with boredom and things like that is, if your rig allows it, which this rig does, you can sometimes use these controls to add like more detail to the bottom lid. It basically just kind of adds more of a curve there. And this is really great for making a character feel tired, for one, but also just make those bottom lids just feel heavier. So it can be used mostly for tired, but it can also just be used to add that extra weight to the bottom lids, which brings our attention to the eyes a little bit more. So something like that. It's almost like adding wrinkles. So you can see I'm just pushing the line of the face a little bit. The mouth is going up there. The eyes are coming down here. I'm not trying to push this so far that the entire expression loses what we had before, but just enough that we get this slightly more dynamic range to it. Now the nostril here is going to be affected as well because she is pushing that side of her face up. And if I wanted to, I could even, I think it's here, add a little bit of nasofold, just a hint of it. Too much and it'll feel like a sneer. Okay. Now I could even take the jaw and maybe move it up a little bit to add just a tiny bit of squash to the bottom of the face. Just a little bit. I could go really far with it, but then it kind of starts getting a little strange. All right. I think maybe push the line of this eye just a little bit more. And I kind of want to adjust this shape here. I'm not a fan of what it's doing on the other side there. And I think the reason is if you look at the line of the eye versus the line of the eyelid here, it's kind of got this offset to it, and I kind of want to round this out. The big reason being this line here is created by the skin wrapping around the orb of the eye. So if it's flat, it's going to give a kind of weird feeling at times. So even here, I try to round that out a little bit more. So even if the eyelid itself is flat, we still feel the roundness of the eye. A little bit more like that. It's not much, but with the face, oftentimes not much is just enough. And Guevara, thank you so much for the follow. So let's see. We've pushed some things here. Now, I could even push the jaw rotations if I wanted to. Since the mouth is closed, we're not really going to see much, but it's always worth giving it a little bit of a nudge sometimes. Okay. Might pull the cheeks down just a little bit here, just so we can kind of get more of a relaxing in the face there. And this is going to build a bigger contrast in the smile, where we suddenly see those cheeks kind of puff out a little bit. And Felicia, hello! Hope you're doing well. I saw your email. I did respond if you didn't get it yet. Hopefully the IK solution will be helpful. And if not, definitely let me know. So here, I want to reshape the eyes here a little bit more. Open them up near the eyelids. Or sorry, not near the eyelids, near the pupil and the iris. This will just give more interest in that direction. Let's see. What can I do to push this even more? Let's kind of push that bottom lid up a little bit. Really push that kind of happy squinting. And the reason I want to do this is it's going to contrast with the other expression where we see a lot of the bottom of the white of the eye. And then here it's going to come up quite a bit. So with this, we've got our directionality of the previous eye. Let's push the directionality of, or sorry, the face, not just the eye. Let's push the directionality of this one as well. So I'm just going to take this and I want to push the screen right eye to be a little bit more open. Not too much. And let's kind of push the brows as well. Shape them a little bit more too. Now the thing with brows is you can push them a lot. When I see people animating brows, the big thing I kind of tend to see is they are not moved nearly enough. You can really push that range of motion on the brow a huge amount without it feeling cartoony or out of place. Okay. I think we're getting a little bit too much movement in the inner edge of this eye here, which is kind of creating a little bit more of a sneer kind of expression versus a kind of corner of the eye being compressed by a smile. So let's kind of tone that down just a little bit here. Just a little bit. Okay. That's feeling okay. There's definitely something off with these eyes, but let's go with the smile. The smile is the big thing that's feeling off right now. Big reason being, when we smile, we tend to offset our smile. We will smile on one side more than the other. I'm going to bring one side in a little bit. This will also help us to exaggerate certain things. Let's see. Bring this up. Put an angle to it. Okay. Now the teeth are definitely feeling very strange. That's fine for now. We're just showing too much gum. Let's see, how far do I want to push this smile? I think I know what's causing it. The brows are starting to it has a little bit of a worried line in there. Okay. So when you're dealing with facial expressions, one of the big things to watch out for is that you don't start falling into different expressions or different versions of an expression. So what I mean by this, and what I'm seeing already in my pose here, is that I've got almost 3 different smiles going on at once. I've got a big toothy smile in the teeth. I've got kind of a relaxed smile in the eyes, where the eyes are just kind of lidded and kind of, they're not super excited. And then the brows are kind of somewhere in between. And they're all smiling, yes, but it's not the same smile. So I need to kind of rework this to bring them back together a little bit more and actually create a proper smile that is one cohesive unit. So let's work on that. And if ever you're having trouble, like you're bouncing back and forth, one thing that can help is, let's say, don't want to do that. Let's say you want to get the mouth to be the thing that, like, there's just this smile that you want to hit with the mouth. Use your 2D pen and zoom in Maya, which for some reason my hotkey is not working today. see. There we go. I had to change the language on my computer. So just bring that in and just focus on the mouth. Don't worry about anything else. So in this case, I want to just make sure that the mouth itself is working. So let's create a nice big smile. So bring that mouth up. That. I want this line right here. This is going to be very important, getting that smile in place. But the corner of the mouth, maybe pinch it in a little bit more so we don't have just this big gap here. Try to shape that a little bit more. Try to round out the top lip a little bit. This is going to help keep that simplicity in that shape. Let's actually push this so they kind of come together. Okay. So pushing that. Right now I'm not looking at the teeth. That can be very hard to try and not look at, but just try if you can to avoid looking at that. Now, if I want to go for a more naturalistic smile, I can just keep it something like this. If I want to go for a big cartoony smile, you can actually bring this lip down quite a bit. So if you actually, this is going to be, again, don't look at the teeth. The teeth are creepy in this moment. But if you look at a lot of cartoon smiles, when they draw the mouth, the top lip is going to be very simple. You get that line here. And then the bottom is actually like that. There's kind of, it's not just one line, it's 1, 2. So it's actually 2 separate lines there. And you can actually recreate that on a 3D rig just by adjusting this. In this case, I think it's going to pull me away from the smile I want. It's so creepy when you just see the eyes that close. Okay. Now, the other thing I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to push the silhouette of the smile here. So we get just a little bit more depth to it. So I might try to do this by pulling that lip out a little bit more here, so we can get that kind of overlap right there. Really trying to shape this lip here. It's going to look weird from the front, but I'm more interested in getting the shape of the smile looking good here. And Zach, hello! So something a little bit like this. So now you can see there's this definite curve to the smile versus before when it was just kind of a round shape. And this is one of the hardest things about smiles, is really trying to push that shape of the smile. Okay. So you can see from the front, it's really creepy. But here, it's actually not so bad. Might pull the bottom lip down just a little bit more, which is going to show more teeth, which is going to make it look creepier. But in order to make it look, can you use Kinect Cam for rigging? You can. I don't have one. I've never tried it myself, but I've seen some people do it and do like quick facial animation with it. The big thing is you have to code the software to connect what you get from that into something like Maya and take that information from one to the other. And that's the tricky part. So now what I'm actually going to be doing is I'm moving the teeth. This is kind of the big step and the secret to getting really appealing smiles is that we actually have to break the character. We're moving their bones basically in order to get a nice appeal to things. Is that a bad thing? No. It's pushing the design elements. And this is what makes animation so powerful, is that we are free to change things like this and really push these elements. So what I'm trying to do here is, right now you can see how the gum, there's this kind of even line of the gum all the way around. I want to push that so that we get a little bit more variation to things. So maybe a little bit more gum in the back, less in the front. Kind of bring it up a little bit more so we get something like that. But we're also not just getting a straight line in the teeth. If I reset this, you can see how the teeth, and this is, they're still not quite straight. There's this straight line horizontally. I'm trying to push this so that we get a curve to the teeth. This is going to give a nice appeal to the mouth. Another thing I'm looking at is the front line of the teeth. I'm going to try and rotate them so that they have a little bit more visual interest. There's this kind of line that comes in. Bottom teeth, same thing. Rotate them so that they come inwards. It's not a huge change from a distance. Keep in mind, we're looking at this really, really close. It's not a huge change, but what it's going to do is it's going to give more visual appeal to things. Okay. So something like that. So now there's a line to the teeth. So basically what we're trying to do in drawing form is, let's say you have a smile, and let's say you have it kind of from the side here. So teeth, straight, and then teeth, straight, and then the bottom lip. That's not a great drawing. How do I want to show this? I'm not great at drawing mouths, so this is going to be tricky for me. Let's say you have a smile here and you've got the top teeth and then the bottom teeth like that. There we go. That's better. So something like this. This can look okay, but the problem with it is that we can easily run into the situation where the teeth start to line up. And with a rig, because we can see all the individual teeth detail, if those start to line up, we get this very straight and unappealing design. So what we end up doing is we push the teeth, for example, so that they bend inwards like this. This creates a more interesting connection already, because it's not just straight like this. You're connecting them like that. But it pushes the angle of the teeth so that we get this, which is just visually more interesting. And oftentimes what it'll also do is avoid the teeth lining up top to bottom this way. And you get this kind of offset to things in the line. So with a 2D drawing, we can often remove these details. So for example, we don't need to see every single tooth. We can clean that up and just have this. Nice and easy. it doesn't bring focus to the individual teeth. But here we have teeth, so we have to deal with them. And by pushing that line, we can make it more appealing and less just teeth. So that already looks better. I think I'm missing a line of the smile. It's kind of a little too straight on the top lip. So I'm going to see if I can bring that down just a little bit. Maybe just the middle part. I want to get a little bit more curvature here. And maybe, let's see, maybe just bring the whole mouth up a bit more so we get less bottom teeth. There we go. That's getting it. I'm gonna have to push the gums a little bit more again, but that's getting a little bit more. Move the nose up just a tad. There we go. So now the smile is pretty close. It's not quite 100% there, but it's getting there. And the big part of it is shaping that inner side right there, so we don't just get flat shape right there. Now the eyes. The eyes are, they're not selling it for me. So I've got a couple of choices I could do. I could keep working on them the way they are now, or I can change things up and kind of restart them, which is not always a bad thing. Oftentimes it can be faster to just kind of restart an expression. Not the whole thing, I'm just going to be doing the eyes, versus trying to fight something that's not quite working. Because there's so many fine little changes that can happen. Oh, that looks creepy. By kind of resetting it, I can work just a little faster now. So get that shape in the eye, get the bottom lid up. Now I need to decide here, what kind of smile is this going to be? Is it going to be like the ecstatic smile? That's going to be too big, I think. Or is it just going to be more of a genuine smile? So something a little bit more like that. Let's see. Push this corner of the eye up here. Let's see. I don't know what it is about the teeth. For some reason today, they're just not working for me. Every time I look down, it's like, they're definitely more appealing than they were, but I think I'm just pushing it a little too much there. Let's kind of reduce that exaggeration. Okay. Now, another thing you can actually do, if you're having trouble posing the eyes, which is kind of what's happening here, certain rigs, this one included, the eyes are very big. If you tone them down just a little bit, so it's changing the iris size, don't go too far, but just bring them down a little bit. What that gives you is more room to act with the eyes and actually kind of have them basically have more white around the eyes so we can see more expression. Let's push that up here, puff that cheek a little bit more. Okay. Eyes definitely smile too. Yes, if you don't push this the smile into the eye, your smile is gonna look creepy and horrible. Which you saw when I reset the eyes, it just looked so wrong, and that was because the rest of the face wasn't going, or the smile wasn't going into the rest of the face, which tends to make a character look very, very strange. Okay. So I'm trying to avoid looking at the brows right now, just because I want to shape the eyes first. Okay. Let's get this one in here. Bring that lower lid up. Yeah, that's looking better. Now, one thing I'm noticing is the cheek isn't quite as... that's why it reset. So I can puff that up here. I can also scale it on this rig. So if it's not quite in the right position, I can scale that cheek up a bit and try to move that so we get that nice cheek portion right there. Okay. That's getting there. Let's tone this down a little bit. Reduce that curve. I think I know what's going on. The eye corners are not going high enough. The corners of the eye add a surprising amount of detail to an expression. And if you don't push them enough, expressions can look very strange. Okay, now this eye, this side needs to come down. So we can shape the direction of where she's looking ever so slightly. Okay. So let's see how it looks, just the eyes without the brows. That's not bad. Not great, but getting there. I think the problem is that this eye is looking a little tired. So let's kind of bring that up a little bit more so there's less bottom eyelid that we see. And this is where you could take a long time shaping eyes. Eyes especially add so much to a character. You don't want to rush this point. Okay. Let's see if I can push this bottom lip just a little bit more. We get rounder shape right there. Oh, and I think, is my stream still going? Looks like it broke down. Let me double check something here. Hopefully you guys can still see me and hear me. Let me refresh. Okay. We should be going. Okay. I think we're still live, barely. Yeah, weird. My connection is showing like it's supposed to be working, but looking at my stream, I'm in step mode. And Orochima, thank you so much for the follow. Let me double check something here. I know what it is about this smile. I know what's making it feel weird. Okay. So what's making it feel weird is my camera. It's not the pose itself, which, to be fair, the pose is not nearly finished. But this is something that we definitely have to watch out for when we are posing a character, is that the camera is not fighting us. And right now, my camera is definitely fighting me. The reason being, the eyes are about the same size. And you can see, as soon as I go here, suddenly that feels a little bit more appealing than where I was before. Now, the reason this is happening is because of the silhouette of the face. We need to either go a little bit more to the side so that we get, this eye would have to be tweaked a little bit, so that we get more of a perspective on the smile, or a little bit more to the front so that we can get a little bit more of both eyes. Right now I'm in that sweet zone right in between where the perspective of the camera and the perspective is the lens length. So right now I've got a 50mm lens length. If I set this to, for example, 35, this will make things a little bit more distorted, which would work better for this pose here. Or for example, if I use 100, this will flatten it out quite a bit. Now you can see how both eyes kind of feel very small in the face. Because of my camera angle, I'm actually fighting the perspective shift of the camera. So let me actually just reposition my camera ever so slightly. Make sure that first expression reads still. And then, yeah, that's going to help a lot, because now not only can I push the expression a little bit more, I can push the tilt of the head. There we go. That's already making a big difference. Now, when I go back into the eye here, let's push this a little bit more. Yeah. That's feeling better. So this is where, when you're animating and you're trying to deal with the pose, you have to watch kind of the global situation. If you're kind of honed in on just the expressions and don't look at it as a whole, it can be very easy to miss the fact that you might just be at the wrong angle to the camera. And that can be a huge pain, because, well, as you guys have seen, I've been kind of going back and forth with this expression, and it's just not working. There's something like just off with it. And oftentimes it's hard to explain what it is. It's just, you see it, but you have trouble figuring out what exactly is causing it. So this is where experimenting is very helpful. You want to experiment with your cameras. Experiment with different lens lengths so that you get an idea of what each one feels like and how that changes the expressions you're working with. Let's kind of bring these out slightly. What do you think of Animbot? I really like it. To be honest, I don't use it that much. I tend to just do things manually for the most part. But when I do use it, it is really, really good. So if you're interested in it, I definitely recommend it. If you're just starting out with animation, just wait. Get more familiar with animation in general first. The big reason I say that is oftentimes with animation, you want to learn the base tool first and then kind of promote yourself to using plugins. What this is going to do is allow you to be more flexible when you do work in a studio. In studios, you're not often allowed to install your own plugins, and if you get used to using a plugin and suddenly the studio goes, oh well, we don't have that here, you might end up getting stuck trying to now figure out how to animate without it, which can be a pain. So just watch out for that. Okay, let's see. I wonder if she just needs a little bit more directionality in the eye as well. Yeah, just a little bit like that. Okay. So we're getting there finally. It's amazing, just one little change and it made all the difference. Yeah, the biggest thing personally that I'm a fan of with Animbot is the motion tracker. It's really fast. The editable motion trails on it. So I really like that. It also has some great mirroring tools, which can be very useful. Okay. Getting there. I think I kind of want to round out the eye a little bit more. Now I'm getting really nitpicky with things. I should kind of just be moving on a little bit more, but whenever I get onto facial animation, I get really picky about the shapes of things. Okay, I think another thing we can do is push this corner of the mouth up a little bit more. Settle the smile in there. Okay. So something like that. So now we've got that to this. Now the actual expressions might change as we go along. But for now, I think that's working pretty well. Okay, I want to try one thing here. And that is tilting your head forward just a little bit more. Yeah, I kind of like it a little bit more. The thing with tilting the head is when you smile and you tilt your head up, it tends to make a character feel excited, but also a little bit creepy. Tilting the head down makes it a more genuine smile and kind of a more enthused smile, like you're going, yes, yes, tell me more kind of thing. You tilt your head, you want to to experience more. Tilting the head back kind of makes you want to pull away. It's like, oh, sure, yes, I definitely want to have some of that. So as much as I want contrast in the head pose here, I wonder if maybe I can change it so as she's bored, her head is straighter, and then as she smiles, there's kind of this tilt forward of the head. Yeah, I think that's going to read a little bit better. It's going to make her feel more enthusiastic about whatever she's looking at right here. Yeah, I think that feels better. And I can even push the neck a little bit into that as well. Just a little bit. So we feel a little bit of motion down in the neck area. Like that. Okay. I'm just being picky now. Just trying to shape things a little bit more. Get a little bit more of a pinch in the corner of the mouth there. I'm personally a fan of kind of pinching the corners. I find it gives a little bit more of a natural smile versus something like this. We're not seeing it, so it doesn't really matter. But where it just kind of separates and opens up like that. To me, that kind of gives a very unappealing design versus doing something like this. And then suddenly, even though we're not seeing that, and that's not going to matter whatsoever, it'll give it a little bit more of a design element. Okay. So I think we're pretty much ready to get going on this in terms of animation. Just shaping the lips a little bit more. Okay. Maybe I'll just try rolling the lip slightly to tighten it just a bit more. Lips do tighten when we smile, so I do want to get that feeling in here. Is this the center? Yeah. So something a little bit more like that. Mind giving me some feedback? Sure. I'd be happy to give some feedback. So let's see here. I'll just finish the mouth here. Get the in line there. And yeah. So at this point, let's say we're done. Like, I could keep fiddling around with this forever, but that's not the point of this. We're supposed to be animating an expression, not just posing it out. You can post an image or link. So if you have the link, you can feel free to post it in there. Okay. So let's get that in there. And let's see here. Okay, let's open up this link. Ooh, cool. That looks awesome. So overall, I really like the designs. I'm assuming you're using, why can't I think of it? Not bump maps, but normal maps, displacement maps, for the designs here, which is really cool. Yeah, it's really nice. Normal maps, nice. So this is all modeled. Cool. Usually details like that are normal maps, so that's awesome if you modeled it all in yourself. So overall, it's looking really nice. You've got a good contrast between high detail, so for example the legs, versus low detail, so the front and the top. We don't want to typically have too much detail over everything, because that's going to create this feeling of not confusion, but it's just going to be too much to look at. So having that this way is working really nicely. I would say the main areas that can kind of use a bit more work in terms of detailing is the cannon. Really adding something to draw our attention, especially to the end of the cannon. So maybe having it flare out. Let's see if I can find something. So yeah, so if we kind of just look at some images of tanks here, if you watch, or if you look at the cannons, you can see how there's these nice little bits of detail. It's still pretty simple, but there's these like buffers and air catches. They're not just perfectly cylindrical. So adding even just kind of that middle bulge, or if you look at, I believe, yeah, this one here, how the end has this, I forget the name of it, but it's basically to let the excess air out and reduce the recoil, same as this. That'll add that nice kind of visual interest so that we can get drawn to the end of the cannon. And you can actually see it in here, like the wide variety that you can get, especially like this big one here has a nice end to it right there. So adding that in could be very nice to see there. The other thing is trying to break up the straightness of the design. So what I mean by straightness is you've got this really cool tank leg design where they kind of come in and they're hinged, so I could feel this thing kind of crouching down or raising up or tilting itself around to adjust the cannon. But the turret itself feels like it just kind of rotates. So kind of building in a way for it to tilt up and down. This would be probably on that front edge right here. So right around this area here, kind of adding a hinge of some sort that the whole mass could tilt. Or even just kind of having a ball joint underneath here, and maybe you do. But adding a slight tilt to the cannon will add a visual interest to the design. The same thing here, this little one, adding those visual elements. Then for the inside of the cannon, just making sure to extrude all the way in so we see that it's actually hollow. The legs would definitely help with that, but even, for example, on any tank, the turret itself can adjust. This way it can kind of have those micro motions. So the legs will be a big part of that, but it just kind of gives a little bit more visual interest in the turret area. And then the only other note I would have is on this piping, kind of adding more visual detail. It looks very soft. So it's kind of hard to focus on what exactly is happening in there. So maybe adding a little bit more visual detail in these pipes could help. And then when you are like ready to move on to more like refining of this, the other thing I would recommend is softening things up a little bit. Now, by softening, what I mean is it's not taking an object and just, for example, let's take a cube here. So we've got our cube. When I soften this up, it's not just, for example, hitting 3 on the keyboard and, oh, look at that, perfectly soft. It turns it into a sphere. We don't want that. But what we also don't want is perfectly hard edges, where you have this perfect seam there. This tends to make things look weird. So instead, try to soften them a little bit. And you can do this in a variety of ways. The easiest, which not always gives the best results, but it's very quick, is to select the edges and then just bevel them. So adding just a little bit of a bevel, even just something like this, suddenly gives us visual interest on the object because the light catches differently on that edge. Let me actually undo this and we'll compare one to the other. So let's move it this way. So let's select those edges, bevel, and maybe right around there. So you can see just by doing that, one looks so much more interesting than the other. The other one kind of just now blends into the background and doesn't stand out. Whereas this, it catches these little highlights and this visual interest, which draws our attention and adds depth to it. So it can be done like this by beveling. You can also do it by just adding more detail and then softening the object. So for example, if I bevel it in this case and then soften it, you get this. So totally different look, much softer. I could take the faces here. Let's extrude them and keep the faces off. Let's just offset this slightly. So we get just a little bit of extra detail in there. And now if I soften this up, we get this. So you can see how we're starting to build out these different shapes and forms just by changing the way we add in detail. We can even take this and let's soften this one, but instead of the other tools, we'll use the Insert Edge Loop tool. And open up my tool options here. Okay, so I can add this, and now you'll see when I soften it, I can really maybe have just the one edge be very hard. So we get something like this. It's still got that little edge though, that highlight that catches. So by using these kind of methods, you can start to polish up your model after you're done with the core of it. Displacement maps also help with that. Normal maps, things like that. Let's see. I'm trying to think if I have an example of this. Easy to find here. So I have to remember where I have it on my computer here. I think it's on in here. Okay. Let me find this super quick. If my computer wants to cooperate. Okay. There we go. So this is a model I did a long time ago now. So right here. So this is an X-Wing I modeled and then put over a live action plate. And a lot of these details are done with normal maps and softening the edges. So if you look at the edges, you can see how they actually catch the light ever so slightly, especially like on this foot here. It's not a perfectly sharp edge. There's a little bit of roundness to it. So if we actually just look at the model itself, so there it is without the paint on it, you can see a little bit more of that just detail work. Now all of these lines on the body and these kind of extrusions on the engines here, even the end here, this is all done with a displacement map. So I wonder if I have the version without displacement here. Probably not. Is this one? Okay, yeah, there you go. So you can see this is just the UVs for the thing. And you can see how it's hard to see with these UVs on it. Maybe this one's going to be better. How there's no fine detail on this. It's just very soft detailing. But by adding in that displacement map, you can start to build in fine details. So for example, all of this detail here on the engine, this seam along, because this is supposed to be a toy X-Wing, not a real X-Wing. So it's supposed to look like a toy. So this plastic seam going through here on the edge of the cannon there, all of this stuff, this dimpling on the surface, all of this is displacement map. All this engine here, this is all separate objects put together, but you can really add a lot of detail very easily with that. Now, with that said, the base object itself is still softened slightly, so you can see how the wing, this edge right down here, it captures this little highlight of light. That's because it's not a perfectly hard edge. And then for the actual displacement, it's just making sure that you UV your object correctly, and then you can draw over everything. This was back in the day before they had much better UV layouts in programs. You had to do it all on one sheet, which was a pain. Yeah, displacement maps, super helpful. You can also use bump maps, but the problem with a bump map is an illusion of depth, whereas a displacement map is actually displacing. So for example, when we see the engines here from the end, you can actually see the notches happening all the way around. If this was a bump map, from here, from this edge, you would see, oh look, it looks dimpled. But the end here would be perfectly cylindrical. There wouldn't be the actual bumps in there. Now the bump map itself, once you have your UVs, your displacement map, this is the displacement map itself. So white is where there's going to be extrusions, black is where there's going to be indents. So I just went through and designed out over top of my UVs all the areas that I wanted indented. You can see there's the dimples right there. This is for the inner console. You can't see it, unfortunately, from any of the renders, but there's like stickers on inside that have little lumps to them. This is the engines right there and the lasers. So, yeah, and then even R2 has a displacement map on him too. So yeah, displacement, huge help for getting that detail. So for example, on your model here, all this fine detail you're doing right there, instead of complicating the model itself and having this really complex setup of lines and having to cut all the faces to get this detail in there and then still properly have it like with tris and quads, you keep it flat and then you just add a displacement map on top and it's done. And the model itself is still super light in terms of geometry and detailing. And it's very easy to soften up and get those nice edges. So that stuff can be very helpful, especially in avoiding over detailing your base model. Because if you try to do all of this in the modeling step of it, you're going to have a very dense model. which not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're using it for animation or anything like that, it's going to be very hard to work with and very hard to refine later. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions on that. I might do a stream where I actually talk about displacement maps. I know I did a long time ago, but I like doing that kind of stuff, and I haven't had a chance to do it in a long time, so it would give me an excuse. But hopefully that makes sense. Okay. We've been away from the face now, so it gives me a chance to reevaluate how things are working. There's still something about the eyes. What is it? There's something disingenuous about this smile right now for some reason. That helps a little bit, moving that mouth up. So again, if it's a fake smile, the mouth will be a little lower. If it's a real smile, the mouth is going to be quite a ways up. Is it just the eyes are not round enough, maybe? Let's see. There we go. Maybe taking lower lids a little higher? Yeah, maybe. Kind of pushing them up. Yeah, that definitely helps. Maybe taking this just a little lower here so it looks less like she's squinting. Yeah. We'll get there eventually. I wonder if it's also just the size of the eyes or where the eyes are looking. Okay. I could spend all day just tweaking this, but let's kind of go ahead. Okay. So we've got these two expressions here. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to animate these because I do want to go and explain my whole process on how I would actually animate from this. That was the whole point. But I do want to show what happens if you don't approach the animation properly. So, for example, we've got these two expressions here, and we could just hit play, and the face will animate from one to the next. And this actually doesn't look that bad. Doesn't look terrible. But the problem is it's way too slow. This is going to be a terribly slow expression change. And if we were to actually play blast this so we can see it at speed, let's kind of hold it for a little bit at the end so we can see the expression change. So save this, and for some reason all my play blast settings are reset here. How big do I want to make it? Not too big. And let's just save it to the desktop here. It's going to be a temporary one. I'll rename it later. Okay. So
let's see how it looks at speed. Because the actual transition, nothing's breaking. That can often be a big thing when you're doing a facial expression change, is that the controls will start twisting and morphing in weird ways. But this, nothing's breaking, but it looks so even and boring. It's just this slow evolution. And that is not going to be visually interesting. We want to break these up and try to push the individual elements, the brows, the eyes, and the mouth, to move much more quickly and with much more visual interest in mind. So I wonder how quickly I could animate this, because it's not too much. If I don't explain, or if I don't go on huge tangents, we might be able to get a good start at least. So let's actually see what we can do. So the first thing that we need to do when we're animating the face here is figure out how long do we want this to hold? Because the face moves very quickly. Like we saw in the previous stream, when we were looking at Moana, for example, the facial elements tend to take about 3 to 4 frames to move from one pose to the next. That's about it. Now the whole face will change over a little bit more because everything's slightly offset, but it's a quick change. So I need to add in a hold. Right now we're transitioning over 24 frames. That's too long. So let's kind of shorten that just so we have a kind of narrower place to work from. So for the beginning here, let's take this whole pose and we're going to hold it maybe for, let's see, let's hold it for 10 frames, like so, since we've got more time at the end. And then for this other pose, let's hold that, so from 13, maybe for 8 frames, we'll transition. So something like this. Then let's add one more key here. So now it holds, and the transition is going to be much faster. Instead of going over 24 frames, now it's only going over 8 frames. This already will help. It's not going to make it look good. And just to prove that point, let's actually, I want to put up the options. Let's version this up. I just want to prove the point that making it shorter is going to help, but not make it better necessarily. It still needs to have the offsets, and the individual elements need to be thought out. That's the core of a lot of this motion here. So now we have this. Faster, but still lifeless. It's just kind of, now it almost feels worse in a way, because it just kind of pops into the next pose. So how do we want to do this? For me, oftentimes when I'm trying to deal with facial expressions like this, it's trying to think of what's going to react first. So she's kind of bored here. She's not really thinking too much, just bored. Well, when she sees something that is going to interest her, or something pops up that makes her smile, what's going to react first? Typically, it'll be the eyes, because the eyes see something first, they'll react, and then the emotion takes over from there. So let's start with the eyes. The eyes are going to react first. How do I want the eyes to react? I don't want them to just open up very slowly and boringly, I want to add interest. Now, there's a lot of things I can do. For me, when I kind of think of being bored and then, oh, something kind of popped up and, makes me smile, there's a little bit of a half blink in there. It's kind of like the brain resets itself and goes, oh, that's interesting. And by doing that, it has this little blink to it. So instead of just the eyes going straight up, maybe we add just a little bit of a half blink in there. So it's going to be tough because I'm only going to be focusing on the eyes here. And actually, how do I want to do this? So let's say frame 13 is where we start. Okay. So just trying to think how I want to offset this so you guys can see this the best. If I was just animating it on my own, it would be easy, but it's going to be very messy for a little bit. And I want to make sure this makes sense to everyone. Okay. So let's actually just get the blink in there first. So the eyes are going to start to blink, and we're probably going to close them by frame 16. So let's take this, and we could go for a full blink or a half blink. They're both going to be fine. Maybe I'll just kind of go most of the way. Now let's shape this blink so that we get a nice form in here. Something like that. Oftentimes I like to reset the controls just because it makes it easier to deal with all of the rotations and stuff than trying to fight all the existing changes we've done. So she blinks, half blink in there, and then the eyes open up. Even just doing this, there's a little bit more visual interest in the eyes. Now, as she blinks, her eyes will start to come down first, right there. They come down, and then they open up. Okay, perfect. So we know that the eyes will react first, right here. The brows shouldn't be reacting yet. The rest of the face shouldn't be reacting. It should just really be the eyes. So I'm going to just take my poses and just start to hold certain things. So for example, the head can hold one more frame here. The brows would hold one more frame. And the way you key this is all up to you. There's a lot of different workflows. The main thing is that you offset things. So we'll hold the brows a little longer. And did I get all the brow controls? I'm missing something. This one. And this one, I believe. Yeah. So, I was curious to know if creating blend shapes is necessary. No. You can. Creating blend shapes is for more extreme expressions. So if you're actually rigging your own face, most like really high high detail rigs have some sort of blend shapes to them. So for example, I don't know if I'll be able to see this without digging into the rig itself. Where are you? I always forget. It's the animation editor. Modeling. Where's the blend shapes. I'm so used to where it was in the older versions of Maya, and then they rearranged everything so it's much better organized, and I never find it now. Shape editor, that's it. So most really high res rigs will have some sort of blend shapes. Basically, they're correctives to make sure that, there we go. So you can see there's a lot in here. It's corrective so that if you adjust something, it fixes the deformation that might happen. You don't need them. It is not a prerequisite. It's not like if your rig doesn't have them, well, it's no good. No. You can have lots of amazing rigs that don't have any blend shapes whatsoever. But having those correctives will be very helpful in avoiding potential issues. And so Artsoft, yeah, you don't need them, but sometimes bone-based rigs will still have correctives. Exactly. So it's not a necessity. Let's see. There's still some motion in the head. Let's keep that there. And the way you kind of do this is up to you. Let me actually show you the way I would normally do this. So it's actually a little bit more my workflow. I would just start offsetting keys for the face. So just hold the brows a little longer. One more frame here. Let's double check nothing is offset there. Okay, perfect. Same thing with the mouth. So select everything for the mouth. The first pass is going to be very rough. I will say that. That's fine. This is really just trying to make sure things are... Let's see. There's no motion on the body, I don't think. I think it might be the neck that's moving. Yeah. Okay. So let's offset this. And now we get one frame where the eyes are the things that start to move. I'm getting a little bit of brow motion, but I'll fix that later. So the eyes start to move. Now the brows. What do the brows do? As she kind of looks at where we just finished the posing, it went a little longer than I wanted, but now we're doing some very basic animation on the face here. So we've got the blink. Let's actually just finish the blink. Get that pretty solidified. So as the eyes blink down, I kind of want to ease those a little bit. Ease that shape. So we get just this slight motion there, and let me undo that. So here it's just going to be a slight eyelid motion. Then maybe hold a little bit more. So we get a little bit of a hit in there. Hold down for one frame. And then start coming up. And as it opens up, it's going to go pretty quick. Into that. Let's maybe bring that up just a little bit more. And then there we go. Now, when it hits this, it's not just going to stay there. So I might actually have the eyelids go... let's kind of bring this over so they kind of open up here on frame 21. I probably want about 7 more frames of them easing. So let's shift this over. Maybe about there. We'll go 6 frames. And on frame 21, I'm actually going to overshoot the eyes so they open up a little bit wider. And then from there, they'll settle down. Okay. And this is where looking at your graph editor can be very helpful. Maybe hold a little bit more here. Okay, now the whole thing kind of freezes. That's fine. There's going to be a moving hold at the end anyway. Right now, it's just a matter of kind of building in the structure of it all. Okay. Something's moving in the brows. Let's fix that before we go too far. And the easiest way to do that is with the graph editor. So what's going on? Yeah, you can see something didn't get keyed. Boop. There we go. So the eyes start the movement. Then what happens next? So the eyes start, we start them on frame 14. What should move next? Well, probably the brows. The brows are very much connected to the eyes. So how can we push these? Well, if she's kind of blinking, I might actually have the eyelids start to come down. Sorry, not the eyelids, the eyebrows start to come down first to kind of match what the eyelids are doing, kind of bring them together. And maybe with the blink, the brows start to come down, but then they lead the blink upwards. So the eyebrows are the actual things kind of pulling up first, and then the lids go up. Okay. Lids, brow. Maybe a little lower here for one more frame. Then up, up, up. And the amount of time that it takes would be about 3 or 4 frames. So from the down pose here, let's just do 3 frames. So on frame 19, those brows are going to be pretty much all the way up. And might settle down a little bit. So let's actually push them just a little higher here. Now this is basic motion that's going on right here. I'm not worried about arcs or anything yet. The big reason, if I start worrying about the little arcs right now, I'm going to be fighting so much detail that is not going to be fun. I'm trying to block in the core motion first. Okay. So what do we have? Eyes, brow. Now the mouth is already starting to move. So let's take the whole mouth section here and the head. Let's hold those for a little longer. And let's double check my graph editor because I do have an offset key right here. Just get rid of that. I try not to have too many keys if I don't need them. Okay. So we want to hold these a little longer as well. So maybe right around there. Do I need this key here? Probably not. Oops. Just the one key I don't need. Yep. Okay. So now just by holding that, now we get the eyes, the brow, and now we can probably start, along with the brow, maybe the head could start moving a little bit as well. Let's do the head and the mouth together. And the mouth itself, if the mouth starts on frame 15, well, the full motion should take about 3 or 4 frames. Because it's a big smile, let's go about 4 frames. So it's going to end on frame 19. So now, just by doing that, we've got this offset in the face. Now the eyes are taking a little long to open here. I might speed that up just a little bit. Let's see. So they currently close, hold, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it should only be about 3. I should take 1 frame out. Probably frame 19 or probably 20, I guess. Let's offset this just a little. So get rid of this and just whoop, like that. Now there is some rotation that keeps happening here. Want to make sure that doesn't happen. Probably there. And let's go to the rotate, or the translate Y. Make sure that is overshooting. Something like that. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of getting the curves as close as I can into position. I'm not trying to refine this. I'm not trying to polish it up. I am simply trying to push the spacing so that it's visually interesting. I wonder if that's a little bit of a pop right there. Let's see if I go the other way. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. So we didn't really do much other than offsetting things and making sure things move quickly and kind of offset from each other. Okay. Before we do anything else, let's see what we've got. It's still going to look terrible. And when you're first starting to learn how to animate faces, this is the big thing to keep in mind. It's going to look terrible for a long time. That sucks. It's not fun. But when you can approach it in a systematic way, it's not so bad. At least it's not just throwing keys randomly and hoping for the best. You can approach it in a kind of... There we go. So that feels a little bit more alive already. Is it too fast? Yes. In a lot of different ways. But it's getting there. Now, what's causing this to feel too fast, per se, and not that interesting? Well, one, we don't have moving holds. So the face is perfectly frozen until it moves. This creates a jarring aspect to the face that makes it hard to follow things. So that's number one. Adding moving holds will help solve that. Two, a lot of the motions, especially in the mouth and the brows, are moving linearly. They are not moving with interesting spacing. We just put the start and end of the motion. That's it. Additionally, they are hitting the pose and stopping. The core motion of a smile or of the brows going up is not the whole motion. The core motion might only take 3 or 4 frames, but then the smile will keep spreading along the face and keep expanding. Keep in mind that that 3 or 4 frames is the time it takes for you to register the change between, for example, a pout into a smile. It is not from the first total pose to the last pose. So we can offset this even more as long as we're making sure we hit the pose within that short amount of time. Okay, so let's keep working on this then. And Vibir, I'm not sure I'm gonna Urodish and Dojima, thank you so much for the follows. I really appreciate that. Okay, so let's keep breaking this up. Now, at this point, it's really a matter of focusing on kind of one thing at a time. Don't get too caught up on doing everything all at once, because it's going to be very tricky to do so. So for example, let's kind of get the eyelids in place. So one thing I was noticing in the Play Blast is that the eyelids kind of overshot too much right here. We could definitely feel them like just slamming into the top of the pose there. So let's tone this down. A lot of times we want to feel these kinds of effects, not see them. Okay. So something like that already helps. On this pose, these two here, the eyelids are pretty much frozen. So let's kind of reshape things just a little bit on this frame, just to kind of have this reversal in the curve of the lid. Come down and then back up. Oops, wrong control there. I want this one. Just ever so slightly. And then you can keep shaping things. The nice thing about facial animation, once you kind of understand the ways of keeping it simple, is that normally it's a huge pain to look at all of these controls and go, man, I have to animate all of these. But because we're moving things so quickly, as long as you're just kind of animating on ones for those few frames, it's actually not so bad. Okay. So we've kind of got the top lids in here. I'm going to work on the bottom lids once I do the mouth, because the mouth really affects the bottom lids a lot more. So we'll kind of get that later. Now we could work on the skin above the eye here. So the skin above the eye is probably going to move with the eyelids. So let's actually kind of bring this down just a little bit here. Make that feel connected. Kind of go to the closed pose. Maybe bring that down just a little bit. And then, let's see. I'm watching my curve here and it's kind of going in one straight line, so I'm just wondering why. Actually, let's do this, just to make it more connected. On this frame, it's actually going to come down with the eyes and the brows, because the brows are pushing down, the eyes are coming down too. Like this. It's going to push the whole eye shape down. But then, as the brows start to come up, it's actually going to pull the skin more. It's going to really affect that skin and kind of separate it from the eyelids a little bit more. So we're going to get this. And what that's going to do is give that kind of fleshy separation between brows, lids, and the middle. So now they're not just all moving together. We've got that kind of wave motion in there. Very simply. Okay. Now the brows. Let's actually do the core brow motion here. The big thing with the brows is going to be the way they move upwards. Right now what's happening is they kind of come down, and then as they move up, they move very linearly up into position, and then that's it. Brows tend to pop quite a bit, so they're going to stay low, and then not ease into position here, but pop into position. So we get this kind of motion out, and then ease in. And then it freezes a little bit. We'll add a moving hold after. Okay. I think I could push the down a little bit more here too. It's not really reading as a down. Or let's go on the next frame here. It's always better to exaggerate than to just leave it too subtle. So something like that. Offset. Brows come down. Then up. And I think the brows, we could push the overshoot a little bit more. Eyelids don't, they'll overshoot once in a while, but brows really overshoot. Now it might be a little too fast, but that's fine. You know, I can always just offset this timing here. Now, also keep in mind, we're just doing the base controls right now. So don't worry too much about the fine details and the shapes just yet. We're trying to build in the core motion. Once we have that in place, the shapes will kind of, a lot of it will come into play on its own. Maybe I'm popping up a little too fast right there. The reason I feel that is the change between this pose and this pose, not huge. I'm not seeing it as much as I want to. I want it to move, but I also want to keep feeling it move right in there. So maybe I'll just ease out a little bit more here. There we go. And I think just to tie it in a little bit more, let's take the eyes and make those come up a little bit more here. So it feels like as the brows come up, it's pulling the eyelids up, which then finishes that motion. It ties them together. Okay. And the eyelids, I think I'm just going to have them. Yeah, just do that. So I was finding the eyelids were feeling a little too disconnected, so I took off the took out the offshoot on them. Offshoot, overshoot. I was mixing up offset and overshoot together. Okay, so we've got that. Okay. Brows and eyes, early pass done. Let's do the mouth now. Now the mouth, same thing. The big thing that we're trying to do right now is make it so that these things don't just all move together. So frame 15, let's make sure everything is keyed. Get rid of any keys we don't need for now. Like this one. And now it has to transition pretty quickly. And there's a lot of ways we could do this. How do I want to do this? So one of the easiest ways you can do this is you could use something like Tween Machine. So for example, on frame 19, I don't want this to be the absolute end of the smile. It has to keep growing into this. So I could use Tween Machine and just kind of pull it back ever so slightly so that it's in the smile, but not 100% there yet. So now, as we go from here, we can still feel that smile expanding. So that's one way you can do it. The other, so for example, let's say we want to hold the mouth a little bit more closed here at the start, is you take, for example, frame 16 where it's not moving very much, and I'll just copy that to frame 17. And what that does is it creates a little bit more of a slow transition here. So both ways kind of do the same thing. One is just more of a manual method if you don't have a tween tool. Now the smile hits quick and then settles in. So very, very simple right there. Now I should also do the head motion because, well, that's a big motion. So the head will probably react along with the mouth. Everything kind of starting to move. I could even maybe have it, I don't want to have it one frame before the mouth. We'll see. But the head motion can be a lot slower. Even though it's slow, I do want to make sure that it has an interesting spacing though. Okay. So we just did that. Very, very basic. And looks like the brows still have some extra motion in there. There we go. So let's see how this has changed things. To be honest, it's not going to change a lot. All we've done is the global spacing on things. The next thing we need to do is go in and actually refine the individual spacing on like the corners of the mouth, the inner brows, the head, making sure that things are not just moving like, oh, brows up, down, done. That's it. We need to start shaping and thinking of how the individual elements will move. So Let's take a look at this. So already a little better. Now it's still the same speed. We haven't changed the timing, but because it's no longer linear, it feels more alive. So what I'm mainly noticing here is we've still got a very generic motion to things. So for example, the head just kind of goes, yeah, and just straight line. Most of the motions are just A to B in a sense. The brows are overshooting a little bit too much. So the next thing is, let's refine arcs. Arcs and space, like we've already done most of the spacing, but it's going to be arcs and offsets, overshoots, things like that. So let's start with the head, because the head is the biggest thing we've got here. And Poseidon, thank you so much for the follow. So, the head. What is the big problem with the head right now? Really, it's just boring. There's no other word for it. It's boring. She kind of just has her head here and it goes in a straight line. If we were to track the nose here, it's going to have a little bit of an arc because we adjusted our spacing, but overall, it's not going to be that interesting. Look at this. It's a very small arc, but it's pretty much a straight line. That is dull. We don't want that. We don't want dull. We want alive and interesting. So, how do we do this? Well, we just need to offset things. So maybe as she's kind of getting ready to smile, maybe she anticipates with her head just a little bit more. So as the head starts to move here, maybe instead of everything moving all at the same time, maybe the nose starts going the other way first. So she's almost anticipating this little turn that she's about to do. Her head might still tilt down, but it goes the other way first. Then as it comes around, maybe it really tilts, kind of drag back a little bit more. So we get something like this. Forward, through, keeps going. Let's bring it down some still. Kind of continue that arc. Her head might tilt just a little bit more as the weight of the head kind of swings through. And then maybe overshoot the turn. Don't accidentally scale the head. That's a bad thing. And then come in. So let's see how that feels. Now the motion might be a little too much right now, but we've got it in there. So now, if we were to look at the arc of the nose there, well, isn't that much more interesting? Instead of this boring straight line, now we've got an arc. And all we did was add a little bit of offsets, have the head anticipate a little bit more, have just basically interest. We're adding interest to things. Visual, dynamic interest. Now I can go through here, maybe adjust my curves to just get a little bit more of a smooth motion in there. A little bit more of a tilt there. Basically, I'm not trying to perfect these curves to be absolutely perfectly smooth, but just get it so that they they aren't popping in weird ways. Or for example here, where this curve is just perfectly straight, I might add a key in here and just kind of offset that a little bit more so we get a more dynamic curve. Now, like I said, this move might be way too big for the speed that's happening here, but that's fine. Always try to over-exaggerate and then have to scale it back versus trying to keep things just right. Because if you do that, oftentimes you're never going to go far enough. Okay, well, that's the head. Now, with the head, we can also do the neck, because the neck kind of follows the head. So as the neck comes through, instead of just going straight down here, maybe by this point, trying to find the lowest point of the chin. This point, the neck is a little bit further forward to show the weight of the head. Then as the head settles back, probably by frame 26, that's when we get into that final pose there. So now we feel a little bit of that weight of the head swinging through on the neck. Not too much. We don't want the character to feel like they're swinging a club, just whipping their head around. But enough that we can feel a nice dynamic change in there. Now I also have to do the shoulders. Now this is kind of pulling away from the face, but hey, we're animating part of the body, so gotta do it. So let's see, for the shoulders, they're just kind of coming up. So maybe at the beginning, how do I want to do this? There's a lot of things I can do. She's kind of relaxed and then she kind of blinks, and I can maybe lower them and then raise them up, or kind of, I think I might just kind of raise them up forward and then settle them back down. So for example, here, find out where the reaction starts. The head starts to move. Let's keep the shoulders a little closer to the beginning here. Not too much of a motion. Let the head react first. Then the shoulders can start to come up before settling back down. And let's see, when do I want them to settle? Probably around frame 27. So I can push this ease up here. So up a little bit more, and then down. And I could even, let's try this, have it come down, then back up very slightly, and then ease. So it kind of creates a up, a little bounce in the shoulders. Now the exact timing for this is going to be a little off, but that's fine. I might ease this a little bit more into a hold. And then here as well, ease that down. So a big thing I'm doing here is I'm trying to look for areas where my curves or my animation is dull, for lack of a better term, and finding ways of like pushing that spacing so that it's visually interesting and doesn't just go in a straight boring line. Now here, maybe the shoulders are actually going to come forward a little bit more. So let's kind of push that forward. And then kind of come back. And I might push them further back and then around. Or maybe ease in, we'll see. So it's mostly just trying to break up this motion and add some interest. Is it going to work? I have no idea. I've got no reference on any of this. This is just me animating like from my mind right now, which I'm not saying much. But trying to add interest. And already I can see those shoulders are going to be too much. The big reason, we're supposed to be looking at the face. If these shoulders are moving too much the way they are now, the audience is just going to look at the shoulders. So we don't want that. So let's just take this curve here and scale it down. But because we exaggerated it first, we now have this kind of ease of we know that the main motion worked. We're just making it smaller now. So something like that potentially. We'll see how that works. I might scale it up again. Is this a beat, like an inhale of confidence? It's just a change from one expression to another. And at this moment, I'm just trying to add ways of breaking up the change in expression. So holding one pose, for example, she's kind of bored and disinterested. And then when she changes expression, having the face change and then having the body add a little to that. So it's an emotional beat in the character. So we've got the body. Let's kind of call it done for now because we're not going to really see the end result until we get the face or we play blast, which I could technically play blast right now, but I want to get a few other things in here. The eyes we've pretty much gotten most of the way on, so let's kind of skip those for now. We have to come back in and refine things, but that'll be fine. So the first thing I want to do with the brows is push an arc on the inner brow here. This is going to be very important. This inner brow is a huge part of the face, and it moves kind of separately from the rest. So let's kind of push that in a little bit more. So as her brows come down, it'll come in, and then we might even keep pushing it just a little bit more. So that way it kind of comes out and then goes out in a curve, an arc. Something like this. So this will create an offset in that inner brow. Now we can still offset the brows themselves, the spacing of them. We're going to do that in another step here because I actually have to get going pretty soon. Unfortunately, I wanted to finish this, but so one thing I'm noticing right now is that as the brows come down here, the middle of the brows aren't going down enough. They're actually starting to move up. So I'm going to adjust this here so that they actually come down with the rest of the brow. That's better. and then they come up. I can offset that a little bit more. Now I could do the corner of the mouth. I'll do that really quick here. So for the corner of the mouth, once again, when we track this, it shouldn't be a straight line. Now, to be fair, it's going to move with the body, but look at that. This kind of just straight line. Not interesting. So let's push this a little bit more. So we've already got a hole in the corner of the mouth. But maybe we'll hold a little bit more and maybe move the mouth corner down a little bit. So it's just kind of that, and it'll go down and then up. I'm going to be jumping into the open lab. I don't know if I'm going to be helping out too much, but I do want to be there just in case. So I've only got about a few more minutes before it starts. So right now we're focusing on moving the corner of the mouth down more versus out. So it kind of comes down. This is a little bit too much of a pop, I think. I think maybe we can just push that a little bit lower here. So we're pushing that arc, comes through. And how do I want to do this? Let's bring this lower here. Let's actually look at the translate Y. And then up. And then back down. Let's also hold this a little longer so the mouth transitions a little bit more slowly. And reduce this so it's not too much of an extreme. So something like this. Oh, and Upers, thank you so much for the follow. That's awesome. Okay. So now we're getting this arc. And the reason I'm going down with the arc is because the brows are going up. So by arcing down while the brows go up, we build contrast in the face that then comes in and settles together. I did manage to get some sleep last night. I have to give a huge thanks to Allison and Toby for hosting the dailies yesterday and this morning. I think I would have just passed out, literally passed out, if I had to host them. But they did an awesome job from what I've heard, and I haven't had a chance to thank them personally, but I'm going to be doing that right after this. Because they deserve a huge congrats and a huge thanks. Also, hello, Sin! Okay. So, we'll call this here for now. I still have a lot of polish to do, but I do have a Q&A to jump into in just a little bit here. But I do want to show kind of the difference without going into the details of the face. We haven't shaped anything yet. I haven't changed the lips. The lips are going to be a huge part of this, especially that bottom lip. We haven't adjusted the nose. We haven't done anything with the cheeks. None of the connectivity of the face is really in there yet. This is just the core controls. Mouth corners, brows, eyes, that kind of stuff. Let's see how it looks now. Okay, there's definitely a little bit too much overshoot in the brow, in the shoulders, I should say. Like I said, I toned them down. I didn't do it enough. The head needs a moving hold. It kind of just hits. So it needs to ease in. But you can already see the character is coming a little bit more to life. The eyes also need a little bit more of a moving hold in there. They also stop and just stop moving. There needs to be a few little eye darts, things like that. But the core motion is in there now. And if we compare that to the first pass, when we had the two expressions, but we just tweened it with nothing else. Let's see. We just had this kind of creepy change. So by changing that and creating that offset in things, this is where the life of the pose really comes in. Oh, take care, Artstoff. So you can start to really push this. And the way you kind of break things down changes the personality. If the brows were to lead versus the eyes versus the mouth, it can change so many things. The other thing is the mouth kind of still hits a little too hard. I want to ease that into the corner there. So the timing is correct. Right now, the problem is that I'm not holding a hold enough. It just hits and stops. I don't want that. The face is not a piece of metal. It doesn't just hit and then snap into place. It evolves and it morphs, but the change of expression is the fast part. We don't want the change to be slow. If the change is slow, it just won't read. The change is very quick, but then there's holds before and after. And D3 Animations, thank you so much for the follow. So with that, I'm actually going to have to get going here right away. In the next stream, I guess on Monday, we'll tackle all the fine details of the face and really push this to a nice polished state and start getting the really cool stuff where you start animating like the ears and the cheeks and all the little skin details, but in really quick and easy ways. So also another thing I should technically be doing is moving the body. If you watch kind of the clavicle bone right there, the fact that it's absolutely still kills this shot. For a facial test, it's fine, but if you're doing this on an actual animation, make sure you're animating the body. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much for jumping in, for following along. I hope it was interesting. I know we spent a lot of time on the face, especially those eyes on the smile. But hopefully I'll see you guys around and have a great weekend. Bye.